Today I talked with Ambassador Chas Freeman. He asked a very legitimate question, in my opinion, is that what would happen if the United States decides to continue the war?
Hmm.
And how do you see the current state of the American forces?
Yeah. So um, we got to, I would have come back to him and asked him, okay, what do you mean continue the war? Um, are we, because right now we're not engaged with any combat activities. That's the good news. So does that mean we're going to continue to deploy naval forces as an effort to in an active trying to blockade any maritime traffic coming out of the Persian Gulf from Iran? Okay, if we try to do that, we got big, big, big problems in the Navy. The story is really starting to get legs. And it's been developing regarding the conditions on board the ship. But and you and I talked about this a little bit last night. This is really a bigger story about there is a breakdown there within the U.S. military across the board, within the Army, within the Air Force, within the Navy, and to a lesser extent, the Marine Corps. And, in fact, what I wrote last night at sonar21.com and encourage people to read it. Last November, Dan Driscoll, the Secretary of the Army, came out with a letter. Basically, it was basically a suicide prevention letter to the Army, and he was ordering, not suggesting, but ordering all officers and what they call non-commissioned officers, the sergeants and the warrant officers, that they had to check on their soldiers every day. And I mean, give them a call, talk to them, make sure that somebody wasn't getting ready to commit suicide. So right there, he's acknowledging there's a problem. There is a problem with people killing themselves. And now we've seen it surface this week with the story surrounding the Abraham Lincoln, reportedly at least 6 attempts of people to jump off the ship and kill themselves. But that wasn't the first time that happened. You had the Air Force Cyber Command that's based up, I think, at Fort Meade. They had they had like 5 suicides in 1 month. And then when you dig into it, the single cause of death, the most common cause of death within the U.S. military is suicide, both within and people recently out. So this is a long way to answer Chaz's question that if this wartime deployment continues, you're going to see some real more problems in this regard. That the more deaths. So the morale on these ships is apparently abysmal. They're not getting fresh vegetables. They're not getting fresh milk. The rations actually are limited. They're reportedly running out of coffee, which is on a Navy ship. Are you kidding me? So it's not like, it'd be one thing if it was one ship, just one exception, but it's not. Apparently, it is across the board. But the Navy has tried to deal with this by forcing people to sign non-disclosure agreements, NDAs. And so if we tell you, we'll send you to jail if you talk about it, that's one way to get people not to talk about it. But the fact of the matter is, the stories are coming out. Parents are pissed off. I got another letter again from another mother of a sailor And she was reporting when she went out to visit her kid, he'd lost 10 pounds, and she said he didn't have 10 pounds to lose. So that, this is the one sure way to get a government in trouble. Man, piss off the women. Hello. When you got a bunch of angry mama bears, that's not a good place to be. You don't want to be in their way. They will eat you alive. And I think that's actually that's what's happening now. Going to start happening now to Trump, because the reaction of Pete Hegseth and others initially was to call it fake news, basically accuse these parents of lying. And they're not liars. When you've got, your refusal to accept that, hey, you got a problem. And the problem is you have now stressed your machine without providing the adequate resources to the personnel. You're asking the personnel to do more than they're basically capable of doing. And so can the U.S. sustain this war? I'd say no. It will continue unless these problems, and I don't think there's an easy, quick fix to them, but unless they're fixed, this is just going to get worse.
It seems that the people in the inner circle of Donald Trump, they believe that right after the midterm election, they're going to attack again. And what do you make of those people? Because these people have the access to Donald Trump. They have the upper hand. They have everything. And that what's important is the way that Donald Trump is, the way that he's thinking about the war.
This notion that they're going to quote attack and cripple Iran's ability to launch ballistic missiles, that would be doable if Iran was dependent upon fixed launch sites located above ground. Because if you got all these fixed launch sites and you know where they're located, yeah, you could destroy them, and man, then they couldn't fire anymore. But that's not the case. Iran uses a combination of mobile launchers and our launch sites that are buried underground that are protected against those conventional bombing missile strikes. And it is, as we were talking about, the one general, what was his name? Nakti,
yeah.
I remembered.
Yeah.
That, they've been building more because they've got underground missile cities, and they're not sitting on their rear ends just so saying, oh, well, we got a break. No, Iran's building more. And even Israeli intelligence, in a sort of an alarming fashion, conceded yesterday that, oh my God, the Iranian military forces could be back to full strength to what they were prior to the invasion and the attacks on the 28th of February. So, Iran's holding a lot of cards here. The United States continues to lie to itself about, we're getting all this oil. We're almost back to 20 million barrels a day coming out of the Persian Gulf. Bullshit. They say it, but it's not true. And at the same time, what's being reported is in the United States, they've accelerated the withdrawal from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. This this house of cards is going to come crashing down here at some point. You cannot have this massive disruption of critical supply chains for LNG and urea and sulfur and helium, and not to mention oil, without it causing economic decline across the board. Now, some argue that, there's been some increase in LNG production in some areas. Yeah, maybe. But, right now what's being reported out of Europe, they're at their lowest stocks ever. And they're worried about going into the winter. So it's the economic dimension of this is going to play out. That's going to really hurt the United States more so than the military side, and it's not doing too well on the military side of the house.
Is Israel capable of fighting a war of attrition with Iran?
No, absolutely not. Israel can't afford to do so. If Israel gets, Israel already is in sort of a war of attrition against Hamas and Hezbollah to a lesser extent. And Israel alone doesn't have the economic or military strength to sustain that.
Then when they push for the continuation of the war, what do they want to do? Because if the United States is moving everything into Israel, so they're going to be the main target of Iranian army if the war starts.
Yeah. No, that's how I see it. I have not received word that the United States has moved elsewhere, or that they've created secret bases in Jordan. So if the bulk of their forces now hold up in Israel, it's just and the conflict reignites, Israel's going to be target number one. And I think the damage that Israel has experienced previously is going to pale in comparison to what will happen to them this go round.